The night was as beautiful as it was misleading. The rooftop of the high-rise tower in Silicon Valley sparkled like a diamond, with the city's lights twinkling beneath a sky full of stars. It felt like the perfect night, the culmination of years of hard work, endless hours spent making my name known in the tech world. I stood in the middle of my birthday celebration, the clinking of champagne glasses and the hum of laughter filling the air around me. My colleagues, friends, people who adore my success, or so I thought, surrounded me, all wearing smiles that seemed as polished as the rooftop itself. A few of them congratulated me on my latest accomplishments, their words wrapping around me like a warm, familiar blanket. But beneath the surface of those fleeting moments of happiness, there was an unfamiliar heaviness stirring within me. I kept checking my phone, waiting for a message or call that never came. It wasn't like my family to miss my birthday. They had always been present, no matter how busy they were, no matter the distance. But this year they weren't here. My brother, Bradford, his wife, Lauren, not even a message to wish me well, a knot twisted in my stomach. I pushed the feeling aside. There were too many people here to let my thoughts wander. But it gnawed at me, growing sharper with each passing minute. I stood there, smiling, nodding, pretending to soak in the adoration. My life was perfect, after all. I had built my empire from the ground up, yet the absence of the people I loved, the people I thought I could trust most, made everything feel brittle, like the fragile champagne flute I was holding. It could all shatter at any moment. As I scanned the crowd, my eyes landed on Sarah, an old friend from the tech world. She was standing near the bar, sipping her drink, her eyes briefly catching mine. She smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She walked over. "I thought your family would be here," she said, glancing around. "It's weird, isn't it?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "Yeah, weird," I replied, forcing a smile. She nodded and left to join the others, but the words she left behind echoed in my mind. Your family. I didn't need Sarah to tell me what I already knew. I felt the absence. I had always known my family would be there, that they would make it a priority, especially Bradford. But tonight they weren't here. And no call. No message. It was like they didn't even care. I excused myself and walked to the far side of the rooftop, where the noise faded into the background. I pulled out my phone again, my fingers shaking slightly as I scrolled through my messages. Nothing. Not even an acknowledgement. Why wasn't anyone reaching out? A strange, sharp ache formed deep inside me as I realized the truth that I had been too afraid to admit. My family, my brother especially, was no longer part of my world. Maybe they had never been, not in the way I thought. Maybe they had always been a facade, just like everything else in my life. I let out a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. I refused to let this ruin my night. I refused to let it ruin everything I had worked so hard for. But the weight of that realization crushed me, pushing my thoughts into darker corners. What was I missing? What had I overlooked all this time? And that's when the phone buzzed. I looked down, startled by the unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. It was the FBI. The color drained from my face. My stomach tightened. I answered immediately. "Ms. Harper, this is Agent Miller with the FBI. We need to talk." My heart skipped a beat. "Is everything okay?" "There's been a cyber attack on your company. We've reason to believe that sensitive data has been compromised. We need your cooperation." The words barely registered. My mind went blank as I processed the gravity of the situation. A cyber attack? My company, the one I had built from the ground up, was under threat. and I had no idea who was behind it. The fact that it was happening tonight on the night of my birthday felt too calculated, too precise. I forced myself to stay composed, nodding as the agent continued speaking, but I couldn't focus on the details. The images of my family's absence, the sting of Sarah's words, all tangled with this new threat to my business. I hung up and stared at the screen for a moment, trying to ground myself. This wasn't a coincidence. My life was unraveling faster than I could hold on to it. I stood there for a moment, gathering myself. This wasn't the time to panic. I had built this company with my own hands, and I would protect it with everything I had. But something was wrong. Something was deeply wrong. And I knew, deep down, that the people I thought I could trust the most had already turned against me. I took a deep breath, trying to force myself back into the party's rhythm. But the joy around me felt hollow, as if the entire night was a performance I was no longer part of. I took another glance at my phone, searching for anything, a text, a call, some sign that my family cared. But nothing. As the evening wore on, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in my gut. My brother had abandoned me. His absence was no accident. The only question left was why. And how long had this betrayal been simmering under the surface? Had it been brewing for years? Had I been so blind that I missed the signs? I excused myself from the crowd again, walking out onto the balcony. The cool air of the night hit my face, sharp and biting. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the breeze wash over me, trying to push back the tension, the chaos that was consuming me. I heard someone approach behind me. It was Emma, a colleague from my company. She walked over casually, but there was something in her smile that didn't sit right. "I've been hearing a lot about your company lately," Emma said, her voice light, but with a hint of something else. "You've been making some big moves, huh?" I looked at her, trying to stay polite. "Yes, it's been a great year for us." She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing just slightly. "Must be nice to have everything under control. How do you manage all those assets? I mean, you must have a pretty secure system in place, right?" I felt a chill run through me. It was a simple question, but the way she asked it made my skin crawl. I had never heard her talk like that before. It wasn't professional curiosity. There was something personal in her tone, something more invasive. I smiled tightly. "I have a great team behind me. They keep everything in line." Emma nodded, but the conversation lingered like a heavy fog. The more I thought about it, the more I realized she wasn't the only one in my life who seemed interested in my business. Maybe it wasn't just my family who had betrayed me. Maybe, just maybe, the very people I trusted most in my career were more interested in my success than my friendship. I excused myself once again, my pulse quickening. Something was wrong. I didn't know how or why, but everything I thought I knew was starting to unravel. As I made my way to the office on the floor below, my thoughts were spinning faster than I could catch them. The world I'd built was crumbling, and I wasn't sure who I could trust anymore. The lights flickered as I entered my office, the contrast between the warm party upstairs and the cold solitude of this room stark. I closed the door behind me, shutting out the noise, and then, as I leaned against the desk, a single thought pierced through the fog of panic. How long had my family been planning this? The sterile white lights of the hospital hallways felt like they were closing in on me, making the whole world seem smaller. My feet moved automatically, my mind still reeling from the call from the FBI, the threat looming over everything I'd built. I had come to visit a relative who had been ill for weeks, but today it all felt irrelevant, my family, my company, everything. I paused in the hallway, my phone buzzing again, but I ignored it. There was nothing more I could do for my business now. There was nothing more I could do for anyone. My thoughts drifted back to the previous night, to the emptiness I'd felt when my family had failed to show up at my birthday, to the unsettling feeling that something was wrong. With each step, the weight of the situation grew heavier. How could they be so careless? How could they be so cold? The man I called my brother and the woman who was supposed to be my sister-in-law were betraying me. It wasn't a slow realization anymore. It was a truth I had to face head-on. But even now, in this sterile hallway, the questions kept tumbling in my mind. Why? How long had this been going on? And what had they been planning? I found a quiet room, empty and untouched, the cold hospital air settling around me as I sank into the chair. I closed my eyes, focusing on my breath to keep the panic from rising. But it wasn't enough. I had to do something. I had to know the truth. That's when I heard it, voices drifting down the hall. Bradford and Lauren. My heart skipped a beat. I knew the voices well, but this time they carried something different. I couldn't ignore it anymore. They were discussing something that made my stomach turn. I moved quietly toward the door, hoping to get closer without being noticed. The words drifted out, reaching me with a sudden clarity that chilled me. We need to take care of the problem once and for all. We can't let Vivienne get in the way anymore. Not with everything we've got riding on this. I froze. My brother's words pierced through the air like a knife. Take care of the problem. The reality of what I was hearing settled in like a heavy fog. They hadn't just been avoiding me, they'd been planning. They'd been plotting to eliminate me. My heart pounded in my chest, but I couldn't move. Not yet. I leaned in, straining to hear more. We can make it look like an accident. No one will suspect a thing. She's been too busy with her company to see the truth anyway. Lauren's voice followed, cold and calculating. It's the only way. We need her out of the picture for good. I felt my stomach churn as the conversation continued, their voices now muffled behind the door. Every word they spoke confirmed my worst fear. My family wasn't just turning their back on me. They were planning to destroy me. For money. For power. For everything I had worked so hard to build. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. It was too much to process all at once. They had been planning this for months, maybe even years, and I'd been too blind to see it. But I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I wasn't going to sit back and let them destroy everything I'd built. My whole life had been one big fight, and now it was time to fight back harder than ever. I retreated quietly, my mind racing. I couldn't confront them now, not with this much at stake. I needed evidence. Proof. The kind of proof that would make it impossible for them to wiggle out of it. Back in my office, I pulled up files from the company's financials, old emails, transaction histories. The more I dug, the more I uncovered. There were accounts I hadn't authorized, funds being moved around that weren't accounted for. Money siphoned off in the dead of night, all funneled into anonymous accounts. And Bradford, he'd been deep in it. I couldn't believe the extent of his betrayal. I sat back in my chair, my mind spinning. All those years I had trusted him, supported him. He had been taking what was mine. But it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. It was about power. And now I had to take it all back. But there was more, much more. I dug deeper into the records, hoping for something, anything, that would give me the edge. That's when I found it, a hidden camera feed from one of the company's surveillance systems. The footage was grainy, but it was enough. Bradford was meeting with a shady figure, standing in the shadows of a dark alley. The conversation was clipped and quick, but it was clear enough. Bradford had been using my family's money to pay off debts. But that wasn't all. He was involved in illegal dealings, funneling money for purposes I could barely begin to imagine. My hands shook as I watched the footage. This wasn't just about a family betrayal anymore. This was criminal. My brother wasn't just stealing from me. He was putting all of us in danger. The man I had trusted the most had become a criminal, willing to risk everything for more power, more control. My mind raced. This was bigger than I thought, but I couldn't confront him yet. I needed to gather everything first, make sure I had all the pieces in place. The FBI had already been contacted, but I couldn't just wait for them to solve this. This was my life, my empire. I had to take control, and I had to do it now. As I prepared to meet with my lawyer, David King, I felt a strange calm wash over me. The anger was still there, but it had transformed. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival. It was about showing them that no one could break me. No one could take what was mine. But as I stepped outside, that calm was quickly shattered. A black car pulled up outside my office, its tires crunching on the gravel. My breath caught as I saw Bradford and Lauren step out of the car, their faces a mixture of smugness and cold determination. They knew I was onto them, and now the fight was on. The moment I walked into the courtroom, I could feel the weight of every decision I had made leading up to this. The polished floors gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights. The walls felt like they were closing in, but I couldn't let the pressure get to me, not today. My suit was tailored to perfection, a symbol of strength, a shield that would carry me through the battle ahead. I took a deep breath and entered the room. The air was thick with tension. My brother, Bradford, and his wife, Lauren, sat across from me at the defense table. Their cold, emotionless stares seemed to pierce through me, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about justice, about taking back what they'd stolen from me. My lawyer, David King, stood beside me, preparing to present the case we had meticulously built. Every document, every conversation, every shred of evidence I had gathered was now in our hands. As the judge called the court to order, I knew this was the moment I had been waiting for. Bradford's gaze met mine, and for a brief second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Guilt? Regret? Or maybe just fear? I didn't know. But whatever it was, it didn't matter now. What mattered was the truth, and I was ready to lay it bare. The proceedings began. David started with the financial documents, showing the manipulation and deceit that had been hidden in plain sight. My mind wandered for a moment, thinking of all the times I'd trusted them, all the years we'd spent together. It felt like a lifetime ago, but I couldn't let myself linger in that pain. I had to keep moving forward. Then, just as we were about to present the video evidence, the unexpected happened. A witness was called to the stand, a former business partner of mine, someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My heart sank as she took the oath. I had no idea what she was about to say, but the shock on David's face was enough to set my nerves on edge. The witness began to speak. Vivienne didn't know it at the time, but the decisions she made helped facilitate some of the financial decisions that ultimately led to the company's downfall. Bradford and Lauren manipulated her actions without her realizing it. I froze. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Had I been part of this, even unknowingly? Had I helped them all along? Without ever understanding what was happening? The weight of the revelation was crushing, but I couldn't afford to lose my focus now. My brother, the man I once thought I could trust above anyone, had used me. All those times I thought I was doing the right thing, and all this time they had been pulling the strings behind my back. The betrayal cut deeper than I ever could have imagined. I tried to steady myself, but the guilt gnawed at me. Did I play a role in their deceit? Could I have seen it earlier, or was I too blinded by my own ambitions? The flood of emotions was overwhelming, but I had come too far to let it stop me now. The courtroom was silent as I turned to look at Bradford. His eyes were downcast, and for the first time, I saw something I didn't expect: regret. The mask he had worn for so long seemed to crack. He looked lost, vulnerable even. My heart ached, but I quickly reminded myself of why I was here. This wasn't about forgiveness. It was about justice. He had betrayed me, and now he would have to answer for it. The trial continued, and Bradford's shift in demeanor didn't go unnoticed. His voice, once sharp and authoritative, now trembled slightly when he spoke. In the midst of the proceedings, he spoke up, his voice almost pleading. "I'm sorry, Vivienne," he said, his voice low, barely above a whisper. "I never meant for any of this to happen, but I'm scared. I'm scared of what this will do to our family." The courtroom was silent. Every eye was on us, and in that moment I could see the vulnerability in him that I had never seen before. A part of me wanted to soften, to reach out and offer forgiveness, but the anger inside me was too raw. My family had made their choice, and now they would have to live with it. But then something else happened. I stood up, taking a deep breath, and I walked to the front of the courtroom. The room felt even colder than it had before. I reached for the final piece of evidence, the video footage. This was the moment that would expose everything once and for all. David hit play, and the screen flickered to life. Bradford and Lauren stood in a private room, their faces tense. In the video, they were discussing how they had orchestrated everything, how they planned to take me out of the picture, not just financially, but completely. "We can't let her stand in the way," Bradford said, his voice filled with cold calculation. "She's too strong. We need to eliminate her for good." Lauren's face twisted into a look of smug satisfaction. "She won't even know what hit her." The words echoed in the silent courtroom. Every eye was now on Bradford and Lauren, the weight of their betrayal hanging in the air. I didn't need to say anything. The video spoke for itself. As the footage ended, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The truth was out. My family's lies were exposed for everyone to see. My hands trembled, but I stayed composed. I had done what I set out to do. The evidence was irrefutable. The judge called for a recess, and the courtroom buzzed with whispers. I stood there for a moment, taking it all in. I had faced my family, my past, and the truth. I was no longer the victim. I was in control. As I walked out of the courtroom, I caught sight of Bradford and Lauren standing in the hallway, their faces pale and broken. They had nothing left. Bradford made one final attempt to reach out to me, but I stopped in my tracks, my voice steady. "I loved you, but love doesn't excuse betrayal." I turned and walked away. It was over.